Hello and welcome everyone to the Survival to Triumph show. This is episode 12 and tonight we've got a very special guest called Perry Power. He's got a lovely name and that is his name, isn't it, Perry?
It is. It's not a stage name. It's not make-believe. It is real.
I asked him that first time I met him, bless. He's just rushed back from a traffic jam after taking his girlfriend away. So he's here now and ready to go. So he's got a really interesting story. It'll probably be quite sad in parts about his childhood. And then he will encourage us all with owning your own story and inspiring others. So over to you, Perry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I am so excited to be here. Every opportunity I get to share my story, I'm very blessed. So thank you, Laura, for bringing me on.
Pleasure.
So it's crazy. It's crazy because I see my childhood and everything that I've been through as a blessing, you know? And I say this a lot, like people are, I'm so sorry for what you've been through. And I'm like, I get it, but I'm like, damn, I'm like, the way that I look at it is like going through sexual abuse as a child and my dad's passing and things like that is giving me the message that I have today. And it's kind of something that I want to touch upon here is for everybody who's listening, who has a story, whether they know it or whether they don't, they do, right? You guys do. If you're like, but I've been through X, Y, and Z, or I'm going through X, Y, and Z right now, like, there's just like, what is going on, right? I'm like, be blessed that what has happened to you has happened, and be blessed for what you're going through, you are going through, because that is what adds weight to your story. And that is what gives you such a powerful voice if you wish to use it, right? So for me, a childhood, which is the core part of my story, is around the sexual abuse. And that happened with my step granddad, right? So happened for about a year and a half at my nan's house. And it stopped because my stepmom caught it happening, right?
Right, yeah.
And some people are like, well, how did it actually happen? And the thing with everybody's been young once, right? And a lot of people used to sit on their grandpa or their grandma's or their mum's or their dad's lap, right? You sit on your parents' lap or something while you're watching TV is what I done with my step granddad.
Yeah, normal.
And exactly. But sometimes whilst I was sitting on his lap watching TV, he used to play with me and, you know, and what have you, whilst watching. And then, you know, other times it'd be different things and stuff like that. But sometimes he would do it with people in the room, right? But you wouldn't expect it, right? Because, you know, exactly, you wouldn't expect it. But my stepmom was sitting there. So imagine like two couches. You've got one couch here. You got a coffee table in the middle. You've got a TV over here. So you sit on the couch, you're watching the TV. And then I was sitting on my step granddad's lap and he had his hand over the arm and his cigarette drops onto the carpet. And then she sort of noticed it and then looks back at the TV. And then she's then looking and she's wondering, the cigarette's burning a hole in the carpet. Why is he not picking it up? And then she looks up and then she sort of stands up and spidey senses going off, right? It's like she goes out of the room and then she calls me out. She takes me back home and then I don't remember this. I don't remember any of this, but I then proceed to tell my dad about what had happened. And then he then tells me, okay, well, don't go to school and tell your friends, right? You know, don't go and start telling your family, just kind of keep it here, right? You don't want a black cloud over the family name type of thing. And at that age, I had no idea what on earth my dad was getting vexed over, right? And what's your deal? What's your problem? You are the villain of my story because you are now telling me that I can't go around to my nan's house anymore.
Right, yeah.
See?
Nice, yeah.
You're stopping now a relationship. Sure, I might be able to go and see my nan at Sainsbury's because she used to work on a checkout, but really, you're stopping me from having a relationship with my step-granddad, right?
Yeah.
And I know loads of people in different situations, different families can relate to just that. I mean, they can relate to many things, but that thing right there, they can relate to because a lot of people here haven't been through specifically intrafamilial sexual abuse. They think it's very black and white, right? They think it's very like, well, don't allow your kid to go. Like, for example, on Twitter, there was a woman who was talking about her two kids, and she was saying about how she was raised being sexually abused by her dad, right? And she was like, I don't know what to do because my kids need a granddad, right? She goes, and I don't know if I should allow my kids to see their granddad or if I should not allow that to happen because I know what type of man he is. And all the people on Twitter are flooding to it like, you're crazy. Obviously, do not allow your kids to see your dad, right? Your dad shouldn't even be walking around. You should be sending them to prison. Easy. They think it's very black and white.
Yeah.
But if you're in it, there's so many colors to the palette. It's not black and white.
Yeah. It's very fluid, isn't it? Perry, can I just ask, I think you told me previously, were you 11 when your stepmom caught this happen?
Yes.
Years old.
Yeah.
So were you primary 11 or comprehensive school, secondary school?
Secondary.
So just started sort of year 7.
Yeah.
In secondary school, and it'd be going on for a year and a half. So what's that, from about 9.5 years old to
roughly, give or take, 9, 10 to about 11 and a half.
And so when this was happening and he was touching you, you didn't realize anything was, did you just feel like it was like just like cuddling on the, like a normal thing, because nobody had ever explained to you that nobody should touch your part, so to speak? Or was it like that, like total ignorance, you really didn't know? Or did you feel something and felt uncomfortable, or was it just felt totally normal?
Well, I see, this is the interesting thing, right, is that I thought it was totally normal, for sure, right? Yeah. I thought it was totally normal. I think, like, especially when you're young, especially when you're that age, I think that it's very hard to know what is right, what is wrong, how you should be thinking or feeling as a 10 or 11-year-old kid. Because the reason why I say this is, well, one, it's factual, and two, because I thought that whatever he was doing was perfectly fine, because why would he be doing something bad, but I never would sit there and think about, is that wrong? Like, it was never a thought in my head, never a thought, right? But saying that, there was a memory which only kind of like reached the surface, talking maybe 2 years ago now, where I, out of the blue, and it was actually because I was lying on my bed and my ex, not my current girlfriend, my ex, we were talking, and we were just talking about the abuse, because we're 2 years into me sharing my story now. So I think I was just talking to somebody about it, and me and her were just chatting, and I'm lying in my bed. And then all of a sudden, literally out of nowhere, like I talk a lot about stories, right? How it's like putting a bag of corn into a microwave and they just start popping, right? They just start popping. It's like these memories like that, boom, boom, boom. Sometimes there's no pops. And, like, it's like you take the bag out and pop, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the same thing, but if you imagine that 3 seconds of waiting in real life could be 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. Or 30 years, and then pop. That's kind of what happened there. And that pop was me being a child. And I remember, as far as I can remember, I'd only stayed around there, slept around in my nan's house once, right?
Right.
From what I can remember. And it was like my parents had gone on a date night with my auntie and her boyfriend. They'd gone on like a date night type of thing, whatever it was. And I slept around there. And I remember sleeping on this. I remember like going upstairs into the spare bedroom. I remember lying on the bed, and I remember my step-granddad, my nan, standing in the doorway. He had his arm around my nan, and they were both looking at me like, "Good night, Perry. Good night. Good night. Love you, blah, blah, blah." Then they walk out. And I remember lying there, and I couldn't get to sleep. And I remember lying there scared, because I'm like, this is the first time I was sleeping around, right? Or from when he started to sexually abuse me, it was the first time I slept around there. And all I could think about is, he's going to come in here at night.
Right.
Is there going to be more to it? Like, and I remember that, which makes me be like, well, obviously I would have like maybe deep down have been like, something's weird here, something's strange here. Obviously I wouldn't have been a very scared. Like I was, it took me ages to go to sleep. I couldn't, some boys should be looking forward to waking up the next day and playing with Lego. I couldn't get to sleep because I was worried about my step-granddad coming in and doing more to me.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, it's like, I don't feel like at that stage, at that time in my life, that I thought anything was wrong with it. But that memory has always made me think, interesting.
Yeah, it's like I've had a couple of people on here talking about childhood sexual abuse, and one lady didn't even realize until she was an adult, and then all these memories came up. I've had a few people talk about it, and they were women. You're the first man that's come on, and they've all said that they didn't realize so much what was wrong, but they, as a child, they remember this feeling of feeling uncomfortable and feeling afraid and that type of thing, of like worrying that somebody's going to come into the room. So it's like more of a vague kind of memory. And then we've had this talk then about, it's almost like the brain, with the psychology of it, the brain is like suppressing and holding on to these memories to protect you
Yeah.
from your trauma, which is probably why, like that popcorn analogy, is why it comes very slowly, like over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not all at once, because I don't think anybody would be able to handle that if remembered all at once.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how old are you now, Perry?
I'm 27.
27. So you're a young man. You're a very brave young man speaking out, because there's a huge stigma with
There is.
youth anyway for anybody, but you don't really hear a lot of men speak out about it.
No, you don't. And the reason why, I mean, I would have done it anyway, but I guess the reason why I'm like 100x into it every single day is because of my dad. And after 4 years ago, after I broke my silence, and I did a video of myself and I put it out there, and then find out from a family member that it wasn't just me, it was my cousin, it was another family member, and it was also my dad, who were all victims of the same man. And knowing that, I was like, everything makes sense. The alcohol abuse makes it, like, nobody becomes an alcoholic for no reason. You're not happy with your life, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna become an alcoholic. You do that as a coping mechanism for something, and the key is, okay, what is that something? And sure, there would have been other things in my dad's life, as a kind of like a snowball effect. But where did that snowball start? All right, it starts from demons in your mind, in your life, because you've kept something secret, and those wounds get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, then lead into other things in life, right? And knowing that, I was like, how many more men out there are going down the same road that my dad went down, where there was no happy ending? And that, for me, is like, that ain't happening in my watch,
Yeah. I've just gone a bit cold and tingly. It's like string, just yeah, it really resonates, isn't it? It's your words are so powerful, and there are lots of hidden victims, hidden survivors, 100%. Like even the reported figures, I think in Wales or the UK, there's 1 in 7 children, 1 in 6 or 7 children are sexually abused, and that's reported.
Yeah, 1 in 7, 1 in 6. Yeah, you're correct, and exactly, that is reported. And I can't remember exactly. I see so many different figures, but that, and it was something like 1 in 20 boys, like men, like reported, or something like that. And I'm like, I'm laughing. I'm like, geez, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now let's just pretend that was the case, right? Let's pretend that was the case. That was factual. And that was it. I'm like, even that's alarmingly high. 1 in 20, right? For men. But that is absolutely false, right? Now, because for the last nearly 5 years ago, 2007, 2017, the end of 2017 is when I started sharing my story.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had, when I say thousands, I literally, my TikTok blew up. I went to 125,000 followers on TikTok. And I had so many DMs, and I still do, from people breaking their silence to me. And there's a shit ton of men and boys, male teenagers, loads of them. Absolutely. Now, granted, there's still, compared to the women, the girls and teenagers that have reached out to me, it's still no comparison. Alarmingly high females compared to males. Yeah. But there's still a lot of males who reach out to me. And I know for a fact that the males are way up there. Like, for example, if we look at my step-granddad's story, him and his brother went to a Catholic industrial school, right? It's like a boarding school for like kids go to from sort of poverty and traumatic and adverse backgrounds. And so him and his brother went to a boarding school in Ireland, in Cork, run by brothers, right? Catholic brothers, all boys, and they were all sexually abused, right? And there's reports all come out of it that, like, literally, if you read all the reports, they all got rapes, they all got everything. They used to have a system, all the brothers used to use, where in the middle of the night, they'll go into the dorms where all the boys are sleeping, and they would just like tap a side of a bunk bed, right? And then the priest would walk out, the brother would walk out, and then the boy would then go out, and an hour later would come back and go back to bed in the middle of the night, right? And that's all boys. And here's what I'm trying to say is, like, it's rife amongst men. So it's like, that's why I'm wanting to set up a charity this year. So I've got a charity in America, and that's for kids, right? So we provide mental health care to child survivors of sexual abuse, and we're in the middle of, hopefully by the end of this year, but it's such a long process, but hopefully by the end of this year, we have our first safe home open, because we got a call not too long ago, like last week or the week before, from Fort Lauderdale Police Department, who want to send kids to us, which is great. It's sad at the same time because it's kids, but we know that it's kids, it's facts, right? But it's great but we don't have a safe home yet. So I mean, so all that's happening. But then I want to set up a charity here in the UK for male survivors, name it after my dad, and just help as many men as possible with that support system that they need to break their silence and heal their wounds.
That's absolutely amazing, Perry. Well done. You're so brave to share your story. So I'm just gonna run back a bit just for my own mind, for the viewers. So basically, 4 to 5 years ago, you decided to break your silence. You made a video that you were a survivor of child sexual abuse, and then you put that, was TikTok around there? Where did you put that? Was it Instagram or? That was
Facebook.
We put on Facebook, and then that's how your sort of, messages blew up and everything.
Yeah.
And then when you told your dad, or when your stepmom told your dad back then, did he start drinking then once he found out, or was it before?
When are you talking about, like when I was like 11?
Yeah, so sorry, I've gone into 2 bits now. Right, okay. So you shared your story, your DMs blew up, so that's how people got in touch with you. And then different side of it now, when you go back to when you were 11 and your stepmom...
Gotcha.
Is that when your dad started drinking, or was he drinking like when he found out about you?
Yeah, he was... I mean, he could have been an alcoholic for all those years, but from what I can gather, and I could be wrong, is that he was on and off alcohol. Right. Like I remember when, like a couple of years after that, when we used to live in London, when I was like young teenagers, I used to fill up vodka bottles with water and put it back in the liquor cabinet, right? Yeah. And that used to be back then. But then there was a good few amount of years where he didn't touch alcohol, right? But then life hit him in the face repeatedly from different reasons that weren't linked to the abuse. And then I think then it all just resurfaced again. And then for about 3 years prior to his death, that's when the alcohol went high. We tried to get him to AA meetings, and did he go? We have no idea. I definitely can't imagine my dad. The thing is with dad was, my dad was a Cockney Londoner, right? Cockney Londoners, they are men, and he didn't want to, it's one thing as your man, and I say it like this because of the, your toxic version of what a man is, doesn't want to admit he has a problem. Going to an AA meeting, that means you have to leave your home, tell yourself you've got a problem. Okay, get in your car, drive, tell yourself you've got a problem. Go to a building, tell yourself you've got a problem. Then walk into a building with other people and tell them you've got a problem. That is a huge, exactly. And that's just for alcohol, right? Which is a big. But now if we go even deeper and say you've got a big problem because you're abused as a boy by another man, and I've heard this from men before, that coming out with that is basically suicide for a lot of men. Mm-hmm. So I think it was on and off for him, but it got quite sort of severe alcohol-wise 3 years prior to his death, roughly.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. That's really, really sad, isn't it? And you told me before that he was quite young. He's in his 40s, is that right?
Yeah, he's 48.
Oh.
Young soul, young soul. He yeah, became an alcoholic, then he had high blood pressure, so he's on high blood pressure tablets, then became a diabetic in January 2017. Then in June the 1st, paramedics come to the family home, and they basically say to him that we need to even out your blood levels. So we need to take you down to the hospital. And they're like, okay, fine. Gets in the back of the ambulance van. He doesn't make it to the hospital. He has a heart attack in the back of the van. And that was it.
It's really tragic. That's really, really tragic. I'm so sorry about that. But, you know, everything you're doing now, I'm sure he's watching you and I'm sure he's very, very proud. And I think for you to be able to one day set up a charity in his name, that's the greatest honour and privilege, I think, to be able to, you know, leave a legacy behind for others to know about your dad and what he went through. So, you know, you're doing marvellous there. And even though
Thank you.
you know, that's something positive to come out of it all.
Yeah.
I just want to touch back on something else as well. Is you said that it was your step granddad. So your nan is your paternal nan. So is your dad's mum, and is her husband.
My dad's stepdad.
Dad's stepdad. So he earlier on you said he abused you, your cousin, your dad, and your auntie.
Yeah.
4 of you.
Yeah.
Wow, in the same family.
Yeah, same family. And I'm very much, one of my big things in life is leading with curiosity, right? And that's all across life. I don't care how difficult it is, right? Lead with curiosity. And like I feel like somebody says to me, well, Perry, how do you find forgiveness, right? I'm a big guy on forgiveness. How do you find forgiveness? Well, there's no one clear path for everybody, right? It's a path that you can have loose rules to follow, like loose guidance, but you got to find your own way, right? Yeah. With the loose guidance. But one of the things I say for the loose guidance is just lead with take your emotions out. And you might want to, Perry, punch me in the face. Perry, like, come on, you don't know what I've been through, right? I'm like, I get it, right? You know, I get it. I'm a survivor of abuse too. I get it, right? And I've coached and been connected with people with, you know, like somebody who I run a charity with, Juliet. She grew up in a foster care home, right? She was put on a doorstep of a foster care home. What she thought was amazing growing up, till she got to a certain age where they had groomed her enough and they actually showed her what that foster care home actually was. And it was a satanic cult. So it was run by like a couple. They had a list of clientele and they had a group of kids at this foster care home. All of the kids, and when I say all, I mean all of the kids were either raped all the time by the list of clientele, and the kids will have to hold down these kids. So like a kid would have to hold down a kid whilst they're getting raped, right? Or they'll be cut open and blood and stuff for the satanic ritual. Yeah. So like that's, and here I don't want to get into this sort of riffraff of comparing stories of who is worse, and because everybody's different, right? But what I'm trying to say is no matter what the story is, there's always room for forgiveness. In my eyes, if you don't find forgiveness, you can never truly move forward, right? And the way that you can find forgiveness is lead with curiosity. Because for me, I was able to find forgiveness because I led with curiosity, which brought me the awareness of my step-granddad story.
Yes.
See what I mean?
Yeah, because as much as we like to think, which we do, these people are vile, evil monsters, and lock them up, and all, you know, you see the calls, castrate them, kill them, bring back the gallows, all this, you know, see, you know, the witch hunt on the social media, and even, you know, I'm a mum myself, even sometimes you think those thoughts, you do, I've got to be honest. But yeah, when you find out the story that that's what he grew up in, that was normal, and that's the way that affection was shown to him. The thing is, see, Perry, back then we weren't taught, and they definitely weren't taught about your body being your body, and unless your family taught you, then you wouldn't know, because that's where it comes from. Is now. I remember as a child, like my mum telling me, like, you know, your privates are your privates, and you know, once you got to a certain age, you wash yourself, and never to see dad go to toilet, and you don't go in the bathroom, you know, really strict like that. I never seen my dad's bottom, you know what I mean, ever. But it's like, that's taught in a family which is in a healthy environment. But like, if you're not taught that, if you're not brought up with that, and you've not been taught that, then how do you know?
Yeah.
Because you're certainly not taught. Back then it would have been church. I would suppose that people would look to guidance. You wouldn't have been taught that in church, because it would have been a taboo subject to talk about, per se, especially children. You wouldn't sit there in Sunday school and teach you about that. You wouldn't have been told in mainstream school.
Yeah.
Even me, I think the worst, might have been warned about paedophiles. They call them strangers, and kidnappers.
Yeah.
You the flashers, and prowlers go around in their cars. You didn't get taught any of that. So what I'm saying is that unless you've grown up in an environment where you get taught that that's not right, then if you've had that as a child and that's been normalized,
and
you grow up and you're normalizing that, it's the intergenerational cycle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't break until somebody realizes this is not right.
Yeah.
Which is now you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I went to add to that, like one of the another reason why some people are like, I can't share my story, is because they're like, well, either the abuser is still alive, or not all of my family knows about it, right? So what they're going to say, all this sort of jazz. I was sort of taking a standpoint where I'm like, listen, my story is my story. I don't care what your thoughts are. I'm sharing my story for me, right? When they got to then being like, okay, game over, I'm like taking my brand to the moon in regards to around this story. I'm going to create a movement around this. Time to get into the media and local press after I did my book. And I was like, I know for a fact, as I just have a feeling that the family of my step granddad, right, who I've never like been in touch with, like I don't remember as a kid ever talking. I remember like vague memories of like his daughters, right, but I don't remember much because I was young. I was 11. But then from that happening, none of us had ever spoken to his side of the family, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, they're going to see me. They're going to see me in the media and press talking about sexual abuse. They're going to see me say my step granddad. They're going to put two and two together. And be like, is he talking about our dad? He's a liar, or whatever it is. I'm going to take him to court, right? Or whatever it's going to be, right? And I was like, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I remember about maybe 3 weeks after I put my book out and I get into the press and the media, I get a message from a woman. And it was the first sentence saying, hey, Perry, I don't know if you remember me, but it's X, your step granddad's ex, right? Yeah. And as soon as I saw that first sentence, I just threw my phone down, because I'm like, and I was shaking. I was like,
oh my gosh,
where's this message going to go? And I then pick up the phone and I read the rest of the message. And then it was along the lines of, just thought we'd let you know, Perry, that you had the full support of our family because he abused us too. And I was like, whoa. And then I met up with members of his family, me, my cousin, right, who was abused as well. We both met up with members of his family, right? And we just had a full story share. And it was emotional, but in different ways, not like upset crying, but like just even more emotional freedom, just even more awareness, just even more love. And, and they were like, thank you for meeting us. And I was like, you didn't abuse us, it was your family member. Yeah. You, as far as I'm aware, you are I didn't even know you were, but I'm like, you weren't the one who's done it. And the reason why I'm sharing this as an example is because many people, let's just say, for example, we got Sally, who was abused by her second cousin, and she was nothing to do with the second cousin. He's a he could die, he can rot in hell. And because of that, she's not open to meeting anyone from that side of the family. She doesn't want anything to do with it. But what she's doing is she's blocking off so much.
Yeah.
Right? See what I mean? But because I'm like, lead with curiosity, that allowed me to meet his family again after 15 years.
Wow.
Find out that they were abused too, and build a relationship with those guys and have their full support. And that's why I'm so big on leading with curiosity, breaking that generational cycle of abuse, because it allows you to come from a position of, okay, emotions to one side, what's going on here,
Wow, that is just, it's mind-blowing. So how many members of extra people had been abused by him?
So two that I'm aware of. Both of those girls, they're sisters. They're both like, well, us two that we know of, we've asked other members and they've said no. And I'm like, but we don't know that's true because the other members that they asked were men, right? They're the only two women, except for one other woman, but she, I don't know if they talked to her or something, but the men, they asked the men and they said no. I'm like, that could be true. That could be true.
Yeah.
But that very well could not be true at the same time.
So that's already 6 definite people then.
Definite 6, yeah. Crazy. Well, it's not crazy because it's crazy, but it's not crazy at the same time because very rarely would an abuser abuse one person in the family. And I have talked to a shitload of families, a shitload of people. For me to sit here and confidently say that very rarely does an abuser abuse just one person in the family. When it's and I'm not talking about all abuse. I'm talking about specifically childhood sexual intrafamilial abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I've never thought of, to be honest. Like that there would be. Yeah, it never entered my mind. It's like it's something that we don't always think of, Steve. So that's creating more awareness for me now. I'm learning something new. Want to touch back on the satanic ritual abuse because a lot of people probably don't even know that exists. I'm aware of it. And like you say, it's normally where there's quite a group of people, usually, like the situation you explained.
Yeah.
And it's quite dark and sinister. And like you said, you can't say that this person has been sexually abused and then a satanic ritual sexual abuse is more severe. It's all relative to the person because it hurts every individual, and it's all relative to that person's experience, isn't it? How traumatic that is for them. You can't say that this trauma is worse than this trauma, but that's a specific kind of abuse which not a lot of people are aware of. Do you know how common that is? I don't. I've heard of it, and I've not come into contact with myself. I've heard of it on the web and stuff, but have you had many people talk about that?
I don't have a huge awareness into satanic cults when it comes to abuse and rituals. Especially not in England. In America, it happens a lot. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say where it happens the most because I don't know statistics, but I do know for a fact it happens a lot in different areas around Africa. Like I'm talking hell of a lot. I'm connected with somebody who does. I mean, there's many, thankfully, organizations that do this, but I follow. He's a guy from Australia, and he runs a rescue service, and he does a lot with rescuing kids from different areas in Africa, and a lot of them are, we're talking satanic rituals, because a lot of like tribes and a lot of cultures in different pockets around Africa literally believe that murdering their son or their daughter or a child, abducting a child and murdering that child, right, raping the child, right, as part of a ritual will give them either whether it's a certain gateway after life, whether it's to get rid of AIDS, right, and there's so much. So I know it's rife in around Africa. I know it's big in America because of like Juliet. I have no idea about England, no idea. But
I don't know much. I've seen on the internet like speculation and stuff, but I've not heard of it here. I'm sure it does go on, but again,
I'm sure it for sure.
That's going to be even more close. I just wanted to know if more people had reached out about that. yes, wow, there's so much we've just talked about, isn't there? It's just trying to dissect it all. So what do you do now? And you own your story, you've got lots of followers on TikTok. You mentioned that you're an author, you've got a book. Do you want to tell us about your book?
Yeah.
A promo?
Yeah. I wear so many different hats in regards to what I do, which I'm blessed by. So I'll give a brief. But in regards to book, so this is the book here. Just say when you go onto Amazon, you can see it. There's a very, very clear reason why. Let me actually ask you, why do you think, and it's not vanity, why do you think?
It's a beautiful photo.
Thank you. Well, why do you think I've got my face on the front cover of a book that talks about sexual abuse?
Because you're a man and you're a young man.
Boom. There you go. Because I'm a man, right? And I'm like, I want to walk down the street, and if there's people and it's happened, I remember 6 or so months after releasing the book, I went to a beach. We're talking about maybe three-hour drive away. We went to a beach, and I'm there for the day with 2 of my friends. We're sunbathing, we're doing whatever. We then pack up our things and we walk up the cliff, because at the top of the cliff is where the car park is. We're walking back up the cliff, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden this woman just darts right in front of me. She stops me. She goes, "Did you write a book?" and I'm thinking, I was like, "Oh, in a second, is this Fame?" I was like, "Who's this?" Right? I was like, "Someone." I was like, exactly. I was like, and then I sort of composed myself. I was like, I did. She goes, "It is him." And she gets her friend over, and her friend, she's like, "I'm training to be, what did she say? I think she said she's training to be a counselor or a therapist is one of them." And she was like, "And I've got your book and it's really helped me." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And then it was just interesting, because I'm like, if she had the balls to stop me,
yeah,
right, there would have been, let's just, at least one other person who didn't have the balls to stop me, right, who's seen it. And it's like, I just want men to be like, okay, that guy's putting his face in the book. Like, that guy doesn't care if he's sitting in a restaurant and people look at him like, "Oh, he was abused." I'm like, "Yeah, I was." I'm like,
yeah.
There's a reason, I'm putting my face out there to show, especially other men, right, that it's okay to own your story and put it out there in the world. You primarily first, for you, right? Because you're not hiding in the shadows anymore. You're not hiding behind a mask anymore, but also for the rest of the world, for those trapped in silence and living in darkness. So I wrote a book. A book is split into 3 parts. Part 1 is my story of abuse and breaking my silence.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2, there's 14 stories in part 2. Half of them are named, half of them are unnamed, of other people breaking their silence.
Wow.
And then part 3 is how one can break their silence. And the thing that I talk about a lot is that when you break your silence, I'm not talking about breaking your silence to other people, because that can keep you living in silence for even longer, right? Because the thing is, people are like, "Oh, I want to share my story, but I want people to believe me. I want my mum to believe me." I'm like, that's why you shouldn't share your story right now, right? When you share your story, you can't put weight into the response of somebody else, because great, somebody believes you, but you can't control somebody else's reaction. You can only control what's inside your control. So what if that person doesn't believe you? Then you're fucked, right? Then what? Then you're going to live in silence for the rest of your life, because you've done it once and then boom, that was, didn't go your way. So I say, break your silence to yourself first in as many ways as possible. So instead of telling somebody step 1, make that step number 32, and you've broken the silence to yourself 31 different times. Then on step 32, you're like, I'm good with what I went through. I've owned my story now. I'm going to share it now. Mum, dad, brother, sister, uncle, I hope that you believe me. But if you don't, that's I don't care, to be quite frank, And now you have the position of power. That's the difference. So I have this book as a guide. So there's questions in there. And what you can see on the last page of part 2, it says your story. So that's for somebody to get a pen, write their story in a book, so they become the 15th survivor.
Amazing. Hold it back up to the camera because I want to see it again. It says Breaking the Silence, Stories from Survivors of Sexual Abuse by Perry Power. So go and get it on Amazon. I'm going to get a copy now when I next get paid. Bring my shackles out. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so the 14 people that were in the book, are they the people that kind of saw you on TikTok and everything? And
most of them.
You and
most of them are the ones that saw me on TikTok. It's, yeah, most of them are. And the first story is my cousin. Right. So after I shared my story on video, my cousin Kelly, she was like, Perry, I want to do the same thing. And I was like, I was so proud. I was like, are you sure? She goes, yeah, I want to do it. She goes, but I need you by my side. She goes, but I want to do it. So I drove around to her house. We sat at a dining room table, put my video on the table, and she shared her story. And the first story in the book is like a written word for word. Like it's like word for word, literally, with all of the ums and the ahs and the yeahs and how she talks as a human being, which makes it so raw and real to read.
Yeah.
Because it's an actual transcription of her story. So that's story number one.
God, that's incredible. I think you're marvelous, Perry, and I think you're inspiring so many people. And there is so much power in telling your story, because it's literally taking your power back from and putting it back on yourself. It's so empowering. I've said before that I've told my domestic abuse story on microphone with work to 120 professionals, and after that I did break down in tears. But it was just like such a release from everything inside. It was just like, we're just cathartic, isn't it? It was so amazing to express what had happened to me and to speak out about the injustice and everything.
Of course.
And yeah, absolutely.
It's an emotional release. It's like when you haven't shared your story, you've got so much weight on your shoulders that you don't know it's there. You really don't realize it's there until like you actually start to pluck up that courage and the confidence to confront those demons, and then you realize, how much you are being weighed down. But when you share your story, sometimes just the once, and a lot of it goes, but sometimes you need to keep on doing it to push through. And then you feel so much, that's why I talk a lot about emotional freedom, which is worth so much more than financial freedom, which lots of people talk about financial freedom. Yeah, that's great. But what's worth more than that is emotional freedom.
Yeah.
You can't put a price tag on that. And it's, that really does happen from owning your story. I say a lot. Tony Robbins says, change your story, change your life. And that definitely has its part to play with a lot of people. But for me, it's own your story, own your life. Lots of people will try and change their story because they're afraid to own their story first. So if you can own your story, then you are able to gain control over your life and own it. And that is where the game changes.
I love that. I love that. And
that's my next book as well, by the way. So my next book,
Own Your Story.
Yeah, my next book is Own Your Story, Own Your Life.
Have you started writing it already?
I'm still not yet. I'm still in idea phase. I've been talking to, because this one was self-published, and this one done well. I self-published this and it got to number 1 in 2 categories. So I listed it in mental health and I listed it in sexual abuse, and it got to number 1 in the UK and in the US in those 2 categories, which was amazing.
Wow.
But my next book, I want to go through traditional publishing, which requires a hell of a lot more work.
Yeah.
But that's the process I'm in.
You can do it. Sorry, I was saying, I didn't mean to talk over you then.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love Tony Robbins, by the way. He's amazing.
Yeah, he is great.
Very inspirational. So if somebody wants to break their silence, but obviously the perpetrator, the abuser, is still alive, like you say, a lot of people wait until the person's passed before they speak up. But if they're still alive, what happens then? Because if they want to report them for historical abuse, or what happens if they have the eureka moment and they really feel powerful and confident and they want to go and tell the police or something about historical abuse? Have you got any advice? Or
yeah, I've spoken to so many people. From the first ever case was a kid that I spoke to who, from TikTok, she broke her silence to me. She's living with her mum and with her mum's boyfriend. Her mum's boyfriend rapes her, and mum turns a blind eye and drinks, and she wants to live with her dad, but she can't. And after speaking with her, I reached back out to her 3 months later, and she had taken her mum and the boyfriend to court over it all, and she lives with her dad now. And the reason why I'm saying that as an example is because it can happen at any age. That power comes to you, and you actually want to, through legal means, take it somewhere. I'm saying it needs to be real, right? Like I had a story recently, a Muslim guy humongous guy. I'm talking like Hulk, beard, bodybuilder, right? You wouldn't mess with the guy, okay? And he is somebody who doesn't do sex until marriage.
Yeah.
He was dating somebody who was very petite, very small, petite girl, and she ended up raping him, right? And you don't hear about that often, okay? It happens, but you don't hear about it often because, like I was speaking to him, he's like, only my sibling knows. And I was like, he goes, can you imagine a man like me going out there and say, my ex raped me? Men would be like, oh, at least you got some, you know, I don't get any. And all of this, like this toxic, this laddish masculinity that comes out keeps these men to stay silent. And I was going back and forth with him. He goes, I don't know about police and stuff. I said, do you feel like, you should? He goes, well, yeah, I might do it, bro. Like just do it. You know, and he did. Unfortunately, he didn't go anywhere because he left it too long and there was no proof, right? So it got dropped. And the reason why I'm saying this as an example is to give you guys who's in this position, to give you guys a reality. I'm somebody who gives a reality. It might not go your way, right? It may go your way. But like I said to him, like I said to everyone, the reaction of the police, of the abuser, of everyone involved is out of your control. So if you're going to go to a police station, you're doing it because you want to take control over what happened to you. Yeah. If it doesn't go anywhere, that's very bloody unfortunate. But you don't let that response to beat you down and make you feel unworthy and less than, right? Because you can't control that. So it can swing either way. Now, to sort of give a specific to your question, is that if the abuser still is alive, is very, very dependent on the person's actual story and their circumstances. I want to say this right now, but there are options of not saying the abuser's name, right? So, for example, if you've dated 6 people in your life and you say an ex, for example, an ex raped me, and you want to get your story out there, for that's okay because you're not saying what ex it is. You've dated 6 people. You've got 6 exes, Yeah. The ex is going to know who it is because it's the ex who done it, right? But again, their reactions outside your control.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? I understand. You might say, yeah, but my dad, my ex or whatever, he might kill me. He might do this to me.
Yeah.
I don't know your circumstances. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But like I have a client now who I'm helping. So like business wise, so I have my brand, which I do a lot of stuff, and I do have a business which helps people, survivors of abuse, turn their life story into a coaching business and movement, right? That's what I do as a service. And she's turning her story into a coaching business, and she's getting a story out there. Beginning stages of doing so. And her abuse is about her mum, right? Her mum's still alive. Her mum's an alcoholic. She's still alive, but she doesn't have contact with her mum. Right. There's no contact between them. Okay. There's laws and stuff put in place where there's no contact allowed and stuff. But she's going to share her story and she's going to say her mum. Okay. Now she spoke to a lawyer about this, and the lawyer said, your mum can take you to court over it. Right. He said, but she won't because she's an abuser. And if you out an abuser, they will not come out into the spotlight. And I'm not saying all circumstances here. There's always anomalies, okay?
Yeah.
But the abuser will not come out into the spotlight and go toe-to-toe with you and say that you're lying, right? Especially an abuser who's weak, like an alcoholic. She's an alcoholic, right? So what I'm trying to say is like, look at your story, know that your power is your power. And if you need to go down a route where you don't say their names, you don't implicate who it is, you don't even need to say the family member, you just say someone. Yeah. There are ways around it. You can just say someone abused me when I was younger. Who is it? I don't need to tell you who it is. Because for you, there's implications as to why you can't. But there's always ways around it. Bottom line is, don't live in silence with your story. Don't not share your story because there's issues. There's always ways around the issues. Yeah. And I've seen it enough times to know that there is. So usually it's just a fear that's forcing you to find a reason for you to not share your story. But the thing with fear is that fear feeds on one thing and one thing only, and that's time. The more time you give your fear, the louder and bigger your fear gets.
Yeah, absolutely. And then all your anxiety and everything plays in worse then, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And that's fantastic advice there. Like, you know, if you want to speak out, tell somebody about it, you don't have to name your abuser. And I think that's what people worry about as well. If they wanted to have a coach or a counselor or something, they often worry that they'd have to revisit the trauma in great detail. It's like you've told us a little bit about the actual sexual abuse, but you haven't gone into every nitty gritty bit, and neither of the other people being on my show. And this is what people think, is that they do, when they do go and see someone, sometimes they worry they've got to describe everything in great detail. Like if they go into therapy or something, you don't have to. You can just talk to somebody and say you are a survivor of this, that, and the other. And if you never want to revisit that actual trauma, the actual thing that happened, you don't have to. It's about coping mechanisms of here now, how to get your life better today, tomorrow, rather than delving into it, because a lot of people worry about that they've got to face it all again and they've got to talk about exactly what happened, to rape, whatever. But you don't have to. If you want to seek help, you don't have to go back into the nitty gritty of everything.
That's it. You don't need to. Like, right now, if you ask me 100 questions and 100 questions were like, Perry, I want to turn this show into something that would be uncomfortable for everyone, and I want to know all the details, right? I would be able to give you all the details without being weird myself. But if we go 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to give you those details, right? I would have been sweating, I would have been stumbling over my words, right? What I'm trying to say is that in the future, you'll be in a place where you may be comfortable to, but you don't need to. I have never sat down with somebody giving them all the details because it's not needed. Details are never needed. It's about it's like, for example, you know, I've got like a book here, you know, just a random book, Wired for Story. I've got a book here. It's not about the words in the book. It's not about the details inside the book. It's about the message that the book is giving you. You know, like, for example, I'll read this book that is 260 pages, right? I'm not going to remember 260 pages worth of details because it's not needed. I'm going to remember the one golden nugget that I've taken away, right? So what I'm trying to say is, like, it's the message behind. So you'll never need to share your details as a survivor of abuse because it's not needed, right? I can't speak on behalf of therapists. I'm not a therapist. I'm not sitting in those rooms, so I don't know what questions they ask. But I will say from my experience and from all the people that I've worked with and been connected with, that details are never needed, because it's like coaching, okay, is about moving forward. Therapy is about going into the past and uncovering, right? For me as a coach, like, I've coached many people about to break free of their story and to find emotional freedom, right? So I've coached many people doing that. For me, I'm a hybrid blend of, yes, we need to move forward. Of course, like, we need to move forward because survivors of abuse aren't able to move forward because there's invisible chains wrapped around them, keeping them held back. And the person that's holding them back is those demons. It's from the abuser, from those events. There's a quote, I think I mentioned to you before, I can't remember, about burglars. It's not what a burglar takes from your home, it's what they leave behind, right?
Yes, yeah.
And that I love that quote because it's so true, especially, you know, when it comes to surviving abuse. It's the events after the abuse takes place, right? And key of after, because we're not worried about the details of what happened, right? We're worried about the things after, to break through those, to get, you know, to ease out those triggers, so you're not triggered every single day of your life, right? But we don't need to go back to, you know, what actually happened, what time did it take place. We don't need to know that.
100%. And that's very similar to the work that I can do with my coaching as well. It's like, it's not delving back into the trauma. It's dealing with, yes, that happened, acknowledging that's happened, wrapping it up. Let's look at the here and now to push you forward, to be able to, you know, get out of that stagnant way of living, you know, that sailing through, to get you to thrive, to enjoy life, because life is meant to be enjoyed. We're not meant to be here to be miserable, to be sad, to be traumatized, to be affected forever. We are meant to forgive. And like you say, forgiveness is one of the hardest things that any of us can do, but it is literally, I remember Latoni came on the show, she was describing the traumas carrying a boulder. So forgiveness is literally, you are letting the boulder go and you're freeing yourself from the shackles of that pain and the power that abuser has over you. You know, you're letting that go, and you do feel so much lighter when you do tell your story, when when you do let go, when you do talk to someone, when you do work through it. You know, but it is terrifying to think of forgiveness, because, you know, you have the anger, you have the bitterness, you have the hatred, you have all of that, which also comes, you know, that's...
you do, and those feelings are very overwhelming, and it causes you to have the reactions of, oh, I can't forgive him, you know. But as long as you remember, or try to remember, the fact that forgiveness is something to do with them and is everything to do with you. You're not giving them a get out of jail free card. You're not excusing them of what they've done. You're not saying, oh, you know what, mate, you're off the hook. You know, it's like the old saying, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget. That's fine. Never forget it. You won't ever be able to forget it, you know? So it's obvious, but forgiveness is everything to do with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, we're on time now. Thank you so much, Perry. It's been lovely to see you again. I wish you every success with your book. Don't forget, everybody, go out and buy Perry's book. Do you want to show it one more time?
Yeah, sure.
The name, Breaking the Silence, and it's on Amazon by Perry Power. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Have the nice rest this evening now before bedtime. So thanks.
You too, Laura.
Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.